This one.
Welcome to the Elitist Corner, where we discuss the most pretentious matters of the mind.
All right. So generosity as an idea.
Yeah.
So I've heard arguments that, specifically from the socialist perspective, that having a society that relies on charity is no good, and you need a system that isn't based on charity and individual choices. So something like universal health care, that has to be based on taxation, non-voluntary taxation. Otherwise, there won't be enough money. People won't be generous enough. And I actually think that particular attitude is one of the threads that starts to unravel a society. Because I think that generosity and charity are actually necessary for a society to function. And so we mentioned this the other day. We were talking about a butcher or a farmer or something, and you were suggesting that they should be forced to give away some of their food, their extra food, or make extra or something like that. We should be forced to be generous. So there's a couple things. A, I don't think it's possible to be forced to be generous, because I think then by definition you're not being generous. You're just being coerced. But also, we wouldn't have any food if that butcher or that farmer wasn't trying to produce food for their own means. So either to make money or to make food for themselves or something like that. They're not going to do it all based on generosity. So what I think you need a balance between primarily self-serving interest. So somebody becomes a butcher and they start a business where they sell their cuts of meat for a profit, for money, for themselves. And then what is required for a society to function is sometimes you have an old widow who isn't making a lot of money, and she comes in and he gives her extra large cuts of meat or something like that. So to help ease the burden. And I think that that's actually very important. I think that as an ethic, we all need to take generosity seriously. Right. But it cannot be forced, because once it starts to be forced, then actually we remove ourselves from that responsibility, because generosity is a responsibility, and then we don't have it anymore. And so then when it is needed, it has to be stolen from us.
I think both, but the idea that you're saying and the socialistic ideal of mandatory taxation, they're both acknowledging disparity.
Yes, absolutely.
It's more of the application of the remedy, right? How do you attain that?
Yeah, and this is something I say a lot. I mean, with like CRT and a lot of left-wing ideas, I agree with the premise, and I don't agree with the analysis or the how to get to the answer. So I agree that there are disparities, and those disparities can be problems.
I mean, because something that I don't like about the idea of generosity, I think we should be generous. We should be self-giving, right? In order for someone to be very generous means that they have much more than someone else, right?
For them to be very generous.
Yeah. So if I want, let's say that I am multi-billionaire, right? And then I see a bum on the side of the road. I'm like, oh, dude, I'll just buy you a house. Right? And I'm not going to work a job for you. But hey, if you don't have to pay a mortgage, your life's going to be a lot easier. Right? Now, all you have to do is you can go work any job you want and you will have a living. And it may not be a great income, but you'll have something, you'll have a place to live, right? What's odd to me is how is it that one person is rewarded so much more for their success, right? Like, I do believe in merit-based reward, right? But for someone to be a philanthropist,
right,
they have to have so much money that not only can they care for themselves, but they can literally give away masses of wealth.
For sure. But generosity doesn't only exist at the upper echelon of society. And actually it has to exist throughout society. Somebody with more can be more generous, obviously, and somebody with literally nothing can't be generous.
Or maybe, I don't know if I want to say it's more. I don't want to say if it's more, because there's there's a story in the Bible I like with the widow and the mite. You know that story where like there's this widow, and like so Jesus is hanging out at this temple, right? At the temple, I guess I should say. They don't have more than one. He's hanging out at the temple, and there's this old lady, this old single lady, right? Her husband died, and she's there, and then there's all these religious leaders and big shots, and they're doing these lofty grand prayers and like putting all this money in, you know, because they're rich, they're well to do,
Right.
and they're making a big deal like, oh, I'm like making it rain, right? in our colloquial vernacular, right?
Yeah.
They're making it rain. They're buying shots for everybody, appetizers on me, get an extra onion bloom, whatever you want, guys, it's on me, right? And like, oh look, God's blessed me so much. And then this widow's hanging out, and then she walks by like the offering plate thing, and she puts in what's equivocal, you know, to us of like a penny or a few pennies or a nickel, right? And Jesus like, oh well, she actually gave more than someone else, because it's out of her sustenance, not her abundance.
Right.
So what I think is weird is like, again, like the idea of being generous. You're not really being generous until it costs you something significant. So even to me, if I give, you know, $1 or $20 or even a couple $100, right, to a person, yeah, of course it has a cost, but it hasn't really impacted my daily life.
Right.
Right. Like, so I guess what I'm saying is like, for me, in my mind, for me to be generous, I would need to give you, you know, multiples of thousands of dollars. Like I would need to give you like 10K and then be like, okay, yeah, that was pretty generous.
Sure. I mean, I think that's a high standard. I think that if you're giving away, if
so
you
it's
give,
any gift, any gift.
I don't think it's any gift. I think, well, it might be any gift. I think that the level of generosity for sure. So the idea that she's dipping into her sustenance versus her abundance, she's actually being more generous than they are for sure. But I would, I don't know, because everybody's getting something out of it. So there's the part of me, the Mises idea that there is actually no such thing as altruism. And I think generosity is baked into it, because you don't really do things against what you don't act against your own self-interest 100%. And so you can give money, and even if it hurts you now, you're doing it because you want to feel as if you're a moral person, or you want to reap the benefits of it later, or something like that. So even being a good person in order to seek heaven, even if you're living an austere life at the moment, you're doing it for some reward in the future. There is no such thing as an act that is not in your own self-interest if you are actually acting. The only act that isn't in your self-interest is inaction.
Oh, you just said a lot there.
Anyway, but that's kind of a, I know it's a lot, but it's kind of a side.
It is.
Because I want to accept generosity, at least for the purpose of the
What's the difference? You said generosity and charity. What's the difference? Is there a difference?
I would say that charity is a form of generosity.
Is it? So it's
because
a form of generosity,
right? Because you can be generous to people who don't need it, and it isn't really charity. So if you and I go out for drinks,
towards poor people,
not necessarily. You can be generous.
Charity.
Right.
No, I'm saying charity would be like. So
I don't know. I don't think. Well, poor. What do you mean poor?
Multi-millionaire says, "I'm going to pay off the rest of your mortgage, man."
But we're talking only money right now, and I think this exists in more domains than money. So you have a rich person, but they don't know how to fix their deck, and so you help them out fixing their deck, or you teach them how to fix a deck or something like that. They're poor in that knowledge base. But anyway. So if you and I go out for drinks, I get it sometimes, you get it sometimes. We're acting sort of loving and generous towards each other as friends, but we don't need it. Neither you or I needs the other to pay for drinks.
Right. It's more of a symbol.
So I wouldn't call that charity. I would call that generosity. We're being generous towards each other.
Right.
Charity would be like, I'm about to get kicked out of my place because I can't afford rent, and you pay my rent for a month or something.
Right. I see.
And I think both of those things can be important. I think those drives, or those drive is the wrong word. Those systems are important in a society. We need a society where we have a balance between serving ourselves and helping each other out. Because
so that's the question though, of how do you balance that? Because as soon as you have any structures in place to offset, right, deficiencies or overproduction, right, however you want to see it,
right,
then as soon as you're mitigating anything, you're interfering.
Once the structures are in place, if the structures are coercive, it destroys that whole thing.
Because like I want to say too, it's like, so it's cool for us to be generous as a symbolic gesture, right? But if we need to do charitable things, right? Then my other thought is like, well, why does a person need charity? It could be for a variety of reasons, right?
Probably a deficiency in something.
Some sort of, right. So it's easy. It's like, I know I've only been using money as a reference point, but I think it's the easiest because everyone deals with money. Right. We have different amounts of emotional or intellectual stability and progress and pride, right? Self-esteem, however you want to look at it, right? But everyone relates to money pretty tangibly. My thought is, why do we need to have government assistance programs? And my knee jerk is that it means that some people are either not capable of taking care of themselves, right, or there's not enough resource for them to reach a level of success that they can.
Okay.
Right. And I think that there's a big difference between those two, because if we're at all merit-based, right, then at some point charity, right, is a negative factor for society at some point.
Well, I would say,
like, if life can't sustain itself,
merit-based in terms of what? In terms of money,
right? In terms of money.
In terms of money, charity is negative.
And have no limbs,
but
right?
Charity is negative in terms of money. Always, if you're just talking about money, because it's money out, right? It's a form of spending.
Okay,
but it's also a form of investment in community. So money comes in, money goes out. Money's going out for something. So it's going out for a dinner, it's going out for a car, it's going out for a loan, it's going out for a credit card payment, or it's going out for your neighbor who needs money this month or something like that. These are all different kinds of investments. Because you're just transferring your money to something else.
So should we make bad investments? That's what I'm saying. At some point,
but I don't know if it's a bad investment by definition. It might be. I would say that welfare is a bad investment by definition, and charity may or may not be, and that's a very hard thing to figure out, because we all know somebody who you could give them all the charity in the world, and actually it won't make their life any better.
That's what I'm saying.
But we know other people.
They're a burden.
It might help.
It'd be a burden. It's a burden
because there is a burden, because receiving charity requires gratitude and requires the burden of getting something that you don't deserve, because by definition charity is not owed to you. And that it's a two-way street. That's why I'm saying it's an investment in community. So if you give charity, the other person has a responsibility to take what has happened seriously, because they have gotten something that they are not owed. It's different than buying a car. I gave you a car, you owe me $10,000. I gave you nothing, I gave you nothing, you gave me $10,000.
Right. Oh, this is like the idea of wasted grace.
Right.
This is a good one, man. You got my brain hurting, because if I look in my garden, I water the plants. I give them fertilizer, but I can't make them grow. I can't protect. Like, I'm having a gopher problem right now. Right? He's digging up holes.
Oh man, Winnie the Pooh.
So, like, how do I say it? Like, there's so many factors that can affect our production in life. And I'm creating an artificial system. Like, these plants didn't just like sprout up here. I planted them. I spread seed. I I manipulated the environment. So it's under my obligation to continue manipulating it.
Yeah.
And if I don't, it will go to a different trajectory, right? It's going to develop in a different way than maybe I want.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, see, this is the thing. So do you let people be what they are and then they just suffer? Or do you say, no, this is like the baseline of suffer? Like, this is where I feel like the homelessness issue is a little bit, right? We could all just say, oh, these people that want to be homeless, we're just going to let them do whatever they want. But then it only affects people when it's like, oh, well, now my sidewalk is blocked. Oh, now things are dirty. Oh, this is unsanitary. And as soon as it impacts other people, it's like, oh, now this is a problem. And my thought is like, was it a problem because they're living in squalor? Or is the problem because the squalor is in your neighborhood and you don't like it? If we put all the squalor somewhere else where you didn't see it, would anyone care? Not the same people.
Right.
I don't know. It's And then what causes these? Yeah, man. Oh, my brain's hurting. There's too many ideas now. I'm not elitist enough for the corner. Not elitist enough.
Oh man, no, I have the same thing. Generosity it unravels so much, and then the Mises wall hits me hard.
The Mises wall?
Ludwig von Mises, the idea that there is no such thing as generosity or altruism.
Oh, okay. I yeah, you were just saying that. You're right. Okay. Yeah, dude. I don't know. How do you because I think that I've shared with you like my own like how my own theology is developing still. Right. Where I see like humanity when the Bible says we're in the image of God, it's that we're not like God or the God, right? But we have the power to manifest these same qualities. Right. Right. So I can exert compassion. I can exert judgment. I've never heard of an animal being like, oh, what? That like the bear never went and said, hey, squirrel, you made fun of the bird. I'm going to eat you now because you made fun of it. It's like, no, I'm going to eat you because I'm hungry. Yep. There isn't this moral judgment. And yet as humans, we can have moral judgment. Right. Bears don't sue each other. No, they either brawl or they don't. Yep. Oh, so this is like anti-elitist. This is the opposite. I've been watching. I'm very interested in Mike Tyson. Okay. I've been watching a lot of what? Fascinating. He was such a good boxer. Oh my gosh. I know. Well, I've been watching those videos of like it's like scary. It's in like 10 seconds. Just bam. Yeah. I know, it's fast. Crazy. No, but like the way he interacts with the world, where he'll be on some stupid news show and they'll be talking and he'll just be like, you know what? You're a fucking prick. And they'll be like, come on, you're on TV. And he's like, well, what are you going to do about it? And he's right. And that's the thing is like, he's dealing in reality. What are they going to do about it? Absolutely nothing. Dude. He wins simply by virtue of the fact that he's the biggest bear in the room. I think so. And that's in those contexts. Yeah. Or like, or it's just crazy stuff. Like there's an interview where this woman's trying to interview him and he just looks at her and he goes, I don't speak to females unless I'm fucking them. So if you want to continue this interview, you know what has to happen. Jeez, Mike. Wow. But it's just insane. One way to live, I guess. It's a crazy way to live. But I like it more when he calls out reporters like, why are you asking me a dumb question? I'm here to talk about my No, I understand, but it's this thing like does a bear care what society thinks about him? Is a bear's feelings hurt that other people think he's an asshole? But then you have to establish then since but you have to live like a bear. Social awareness. Then we don't want. Do we want to be animals? No, I know. Like animals. Then we're in a whole different system. That's what's fascinating to me about it. I'm not saying I think that he's a good guy or that I want to live that way. It's fascinating to me that there's a person out there that's existing in society in a different way like that. But there's other people. I feel that some of that brashness. Yep. Is displayed in like the gangster idea. Right? Like I run this area or this is my turf. It's some of those same ideals. Right? Absolutely. But those guys have ideas of like loyalty to the pack, to the area, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. There's, I mean, of course. And Mike Tyson too. He has he deals in narrative. He has society. He has friends, all of these things. Like he's not a flower. He's not a tree.
Yeah.
He's still a human. But, if you watch those crazy videos of like a lion eating a gazelle and the gazelle's like crying and screaming, I don't imagine the lion feels bad or feels anything for the gazelle.
No, it's like, oh, this tastes good.
And no other lion is like, oh man, that lion's being an asshole. And so probably no boar is sitting there being like, man, that lion's being an asshole to that gazelle. The boar is probably just like, whew, glad it wasn't me. Runs away.
So, I mean, but this still kind of ties into this whole discussion then of generosity or charity versus compelled taxes.
Yeah.
To mend these social woes.
Mm-hmm.
The lefty side then is saying, no, you're all a bunch of animals and you don't have compassion, you don't have generosity. So we have to take this money from you to give it to the people that do understand what compassion is, so that they can disperse the compassion professionally.
So we've talked about this before, about where I struggle with this, about what many philosophies work very hard to separate humans from animals. Mm-hmm. Christian theology, libertarian philosophy, objectivist philosophy, tons of philosophies do this. And I always wonder why, because I don't think we're that separate. And like you and I have talked about it, like orangutans or apes or chimpanzees, like they're surprisingly close to us. We can even have blood transfusions from chimps. It's crazy. Like they're almost us. We act similarly. We act similarly towards our children. Like it's crazy. But at the same time, like a shark is very different than us. At least from our perspective. And so us focusing on that difference, I do actually see it. I see more and more where it has philosophical importance, because we deal in narrative, leaning on the narrative that's what we do versus a bear that doesn't do anything with narrative.
Right. But I think it's also where, I mean, I would almost speculate like to use restraint in a proper way, right? Mm-hmm. So to not restrain our anger, and we allow that to manifest into violence. Right. That's probably like the same thing as realizing, oh, I could help someone else suffer less, yet I choose not to because I don't want to suffer at all. Yep. Or I fear my own suffering more than the suffering.
Right. It's like pure hedonism.
Oh, dude, my head hurts.
All right. Well, let's put a button on it. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's so much. It hurts.
Welcome to the Elitist Corner, where we discuss the most pretentious matters of the mind.